What is going on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter? This is your host, Marcus James Witherspoon. It's another edition of 717 Sports Chat Live. This is episode 35, and we're doing it on a late night, as I usually do it in the mornings before I head off to work, etc. I had a meeting this morning, so I couldn't do it this morning. But, of course, a ton of news came in through the day. Some very important topics. A lot of important topics, but none bigger than obviously Tom Brady, widely considered the GOAT, the greatest quarterback of all time. Hard to argue with some championships. You can sit there and say what you want. Oh, he cheated, or he had all these great defenses early on in his career, etc., etc. But you can't deny the man's greatness. So, obviously we got that. We got Tom Brady retiring. We also got Josh McDaniels. I want to give you some takeaways from the introductory press conference from the Raiders introducing Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels as their new head coach and general manager. And then we're also going to talk about the big welterweight showdown between Keith Thurman and Mario Barrios. Pretty big crossroads fight, especially for Keith Tom Thurman. Kind of needs to win this fight, because if he doesn't, then who knows where he goes off from here. For Mario Barrios, not so much. If he loses, it does kind of knock him down the pole, but he's still young and he has options. So those are the three topics we're going to cover tonight, or whatnot. So let's start off, obviously, with the big news, the biggest news of the whole day. We were expecting it. We knew it was going to happen. If you are a fan of football and you listen to when a guy who's been in the league, especially as long as Tom Brady, but when you listen to guys who have been in the league, I want to say a solid past 10 years, when they start talking about going on radio shows, talking about family and life outside of football, you kind of already have the idea that it's over. You know what I mean? Like, when you start talking about other things, or no matter what you do, you know what I mean? It's just like with a lot of fighters who like to go out and do acting. When you start to think about other things outside the profession that, made you what you are, made you famous, or made you successful, you're already done. So as I stated in my earlier episode last week, Tom Brady went on a radio show and said, my family has given me so much. The opportunity to keep playing, especially at this advanced age, 44 years old, and to play as long as he has. And he basically said, maybe it's time I start giving back to my family. And when he started talking like that, now you heard Tom, before say Giselle was on him about retiring and there's nothing else to prove, etc., etc. You heard that stuff in the past about Giselle wanting him to come home before, but you didn't really hear from him. He still always talked about he had that competitive drive to play. But when he went on that radio show and said, maybe it's time I start giving back to my family, being that they gave so much to me, sacrificing, time away from me, being away from home to still play football in an advanced age, maybe it's time I, give back to them. Right then and there, when I heard that, I said, Tom Brady is going to retire. And then obviously today we got the big news that he did retire. And as I said at the beginning, you can say what you want about Tom Brady. You can hate him, you can love him, whatever. Especially if you hate him. You can say what you want. You can say, oh, well, what about the Deflategate? What about Spygate? Oh, what about all them great defenses he had, at the beginning of his, dynasty with New England in the first 3 out of 4 championships. Well, where I combat that is, okay, well, who's the guy throwing the football? You know what I mean? Who's the guy who was leading those last second drives to get them in the field goal range to win the game? With all due respect, that wasn't the defense. That wasn't Lawyer Malloy. That wasn't Ty Law. That wasn't Richard Seymour. That wasn't Teddy Bruschi. That was Tom Brady. This guy was truly great. There's no doubt about it. You can't deny that. You can sit there and say, oh, the NFL was rigged, this and this. And listen, man, at the end of the day, he's the one throwing the damn football out there. He's the one doing it. He's the one playing. And the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. I could sit there. I'll put it this way. You want to talk about a quarterback who basically got championships off of the back of a good defense? That's Terry Bradshaw. He got 4 championships. If you look up the numbers, Terry Bradshaw had 2 more interceptions and touchdowns. I'm not saying Terry Bradshaw wasn't a great quarterback, but my argument is that if you're going to make the argument that Tom Brady, especially the only reason why he got a lot of championships or half his championships because of how great his defenses were early on, I combat that by saying, look at his overall numbers. He holds the NFL touchdown record. He holds the NFL record for most yards. Like, that's not defense doing that. You can say, oh, he played 20-something plus years. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? He was still putting up tremendous numbers, you know what I mean, regardless. And you got to keep in mind, and this guy was winning without superstars, really. Most of the time, when Tom Brady, I'm about to say, hell, other than Gronkowski, you know what I mean, who obviously ended up being a superstar, an all-pro, on offense. Really, who can you say that Tom Brady was throwing to other than Randy Moss and Rob Gronkowski that was like that oh my God type receiver? Who? I mean, maybe Troy Brown was really underrated. I always liked Troy Brown when I was younger. I thought he was a really good wide receiver. I thought he didn't get enough credit for how good he was. But was he ever considered on that level of a Randy Moss or a Rob Gronkowski in terms of offensive weapon? No. They say, what about Wes Welker? Wes Welker was good for a few years. He was good for a few years, but that was about it. I'm talking about a true number 1 wide receiver like a Calvin Johnson, like a Randy Moss. Tom only had that for a minimum amount of his career. He didn't have that his whole career up until, the most he had, obviously, the most talent he ever had around him is when he went to Tampa Bay. That is the most talent he ever had around him on the offensive side of the football. This guy made guys like Chris Hogan look fantastic. You cannot deny the greatness of Tom Brady. And listen, as a football fan, it sucks to see him go after all these years, saying, oh, when is he finally going to retire? Like, I'm tired of seeing him, tired of him winning, hogging up all the titles, etc. As a football fan, you kind of now hate to see him go because it's like now, like, them Brady conversations, whether they were positive or negative, they were always entertaining to talk about. And you can't lie and say he wasn't entertaining to watch. You can't sit there and say you didn't enjoy watching, even if you're not a fan, as just of the team he played for him. You can't sit there and deny and say, if you're a fan of the game, you can't admire the work he did. Because if you do, then you're just flat out lying to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, the man was truly great. 6th-round draft pick out of Michigan. Let me tell you a quick little story about Tom Brady. For me, I remember being a kid watching college football around the time when Tom Brady was in college at Michigan. And I remember, of course, when you're a kid, you always remember the jersey number more than the names, I would like to think. Fortunately for me, I've always had a weird elephant man type memory. Pretty good with memory. I remember when Tom Brady played at Michigan because I was, especially back then as a kid, I was heavy in college football. I'm a Virginia Tech fan. You know what I mean? I was a big fan of Michael Vick around that time too. You know what I mean? So, but I would watch those games. Penn State, and Michigan and Ohio State. And I watched those games with Tom Brady. And I always thought Tom Brady was a solid quarterback in college. You know what I mean? I always thought that. And I remember, as I got a couple years older, so this was like 98 when I first saw him play at Michigan. I remember it was like maybe 2000, 2001, and I'm playing Madden. And for some strange reason, I'm just like, man, I wonder whatever happened to that guy from Michigan, Tom Brady. I never, like, I heard of him after, like, watching him on, in college. Like, I didn't hear him going, like, early in the draft, none of that. And then, as I'm flicking through the game and you're looking through all the rosters what other teams have outside of your team, you know what I mean? I see Tom Brady's obviously on the Patriots. And I was like, oh, wow, didn't even know he, made it to the NFL. Didn't hear nothing about it because obviously he was a sixth-round pick. He was a sixth-round pick. And to be a sixth-round pick and to have a guy like Bill Belichick who had championship pedigree before being the coach in New England, people forget that Bill Belichick was the defensive coordinator of the New York Giants championship-winning team. He was the defensive coordinator, the greatest defensive player of all time, Lawrence Taylor. And for a guy who worked alongside Bill Parcells, who's obviously a legendary coach and, old school, no nonsense, and had a keen eye for talent. If Bill Belichick decided in midseason, basically, that when Drew Bledsoe got hurt, Tom Brady, obviously they went on that run when they first won their first Super Bowl, was good enough to stay in. Mind you, Drew Bledsoe had took the Patriots to the Super Bowl before. Like literally about 4 or 5 seasons before Tom Brady come along. So for Bill Belichick to say, no, we're going to stick with Brady. You know what I mean? You can't deny that obviously there was something there. And then what we got was 20 plus years of greatness. You can say what the hell you want about the man. You don't have to like him. You know what I mean? You can sit there and say, oh, well, look at all the nice defenses. Like I said at the, for his first 3 championships. Doesn't matter. He's the one throwing the football out there. He's the one throwing the football out there. And you can't tell me as a football fan that in so many ways it kind of sucks because it's the end of an era, especially if you're in my age. I'm going to be around my age. I'm going to be 33 this year. In June, I'll be 33. You know what I mean? So basically, Roethlisberger, Brady, Manning, both Manning brothers, Rivers, that was our era. That was our era. Breeze. Our era literally has, like our teenage eras, has just came to an end today. Literally, it just came to an end today with Tom Brady retiring. And it sucks because it's just like, it just makes you think back. It's like, damn, all that time just passed that fast? Doesn't seem like it, but it did. And it's crazy. But at the same time, man, listen, as a Raider fan, I got my heart broken by this guy. Everybody knows that was a fumble. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to nobody and say that this guy wasn't great. Look at the numbers. Look at the championships. It proves itself. You don't got to like him. But damn, I don't see how you can't respect what he has done in football. How can you not? How can you not respect what the man has done in football? Like, I just don't understand. Like, if you're still hating on Tom Brady, let me tell you something, man. And I'm just an honest guy. I remember back in the day, especially when the Spygate stuff and the Deflategate and all that, I'm like, man, I mean, this, all this cheating shit, this and this, and I kind of was on that bandwagon too. But then I had to give it some real deep thought. I mean, 2 things. As a Raider fan, Al Davis' mantra in the locker room was cheating is encouraged. So as a Raider fan, how can I be hypocritical and bitch about it? I mean, if we set the rule, you know what I mean? If that's the rule we set, don't matter how long ago that was. But if that's the rule we set, when other teams do it, how can you really be mad? That was the rule that was set. And then 2, I mean, all teams cheat in their own way. It's just not talked about. All teams cheat in their own way. You don't think that every other team isn't using some little underlying dirty tactics to try to gain an advantage? Get out of here. If you don't believe that, then you're fucking sorely mistaken. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, this guy was truly great. 6th-round draft pick. Everybody passed up on him. Nobody wanted him. And then look at the career he's had. You can't sit there and say, well, it was all really Belichick, because he won a championship without Belichick. The guy is just truly great. And I honestly don't think he should have retired. I don't. And here's why I don't think Tom Brady should have retired. I don't think Tom Brady should have retired for the simple fact is, you look at his numbers from this past year, it's obvious he can still play at a very high level. This team that they brought back was banged up for most of the year, especially in the secondary. Especially in the first half of the year, they got banged up in the secondary. I feel like if he would have came back one more year, I'm not saying they would have won the championship next year, but I feel like they still would have been competing at a high level and they would have had a chance. And I think if he would have gave it one more run to come back with that roster, they could have had a chance to compete for another championship. As long as they would have been able to stay healthy this time around, etc. I do think that he should have gave it one more chance. You know what I mean? I think that he will regret that. Just given how that team is built, like, they're still built to win. They're still built to win. So, I mean, I just can't believe it finally happened. I mean, you knew it was going to happen at some point, I guess you could say. But at the same time, I'll be honest with you guys, I thought he was going to play till he was 50. I did. Given how the game is played nowadays and you don't really get to hit the quarterback like that, you know what I mean? I thought that if his body could hold up, he would want to play till he's 50. But it's obvious I was, wrong. And, he decided that, it was finally time to hang up his cleats. There was nothing else to prove. He proved everything he wanted to prove. It was time for him to go home and be with his family. And, I respect that. He put in more time than what anybody ever probably thought even himself thought he was going to play at least at the beginning of this. So, I mean, it's just so weird, though. It is. It's so weird. It's really, really weird. Tom Brady officially retires. Like, I can't believe it. It's the end of an era, guys. Like I said, it's the end of people in my age group. It's the end of our era. In terms of, like, when we were teenagers, you know what I mean? Like, our teenage years, you know what I mean? Growing up, watching, these were the quarterbacks that were the top guys in our era. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so weird and so fascinating at the same time. Like, it's crazy. I wonder what he's going to do. You know what I mean? And another thing about him, like, I will say this. Listen, I personally started to like Tom Brady when he went to Tampa because you started to see more of his personality. Listen, everybody knows how New England system's built. You can't be yourself. It's all about winning there. You started to see Tom be himself, and honestly, Tom's really not that bad, man. He's just like us. You know what I mean? In so many ways. He just obviously got a lot of money and a lot of championships and is, the greatest quarterback of all time. But it's just so crazy. Like, I wonder what he's going to do. Like, I wonder if he would ever take up coaching. I could see him trying to take up coaching for some reason, trying to get some more championships that way. But, man, Tom Brady officially retires. Man, guys, sorry if I'm being over dramatic about it, but it's just like, I guess when it finally hits you, like, as a football fan, it's just like, wow. It finally happened. Like, shit. Damn. Guys, man. Well, hey, once again, guys, this is 717 Sports Chat Live. I'm your host, Marcus J. Witherspoon. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. The support is greatly appreciated, as well as hit that notification icon to get all the latest content when I'm going on live, which is basically every day now. So hit that notification icon so you can be here and chat it up with me if you so choose to. But yeah, Tom Brady, man, like, it's just so weird. Like I said, like, it's going to be interesting to see what he wants to do in his life after football. You know what I mean? A guy who's had such competitive drive like him. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild. It's real wild, real wild. I'm still trying to process it. You know what I mean? Like, damn. But we got to get used to it. You know what I mean? Now we got these new era guys. We got Josh Allen. We got Mahomes. We got Burrow. You know what I mean? Like, you got these new era guys in here now, so it's time to pass the torch, and rightfully so. It has to happen at some point, but at the end of the day, shout out Tom Brady. You know what I mean? He had a tremendous career. There's no doubt about it. You can love him, you can hate him, whatever. At the end of the day, he is the greatest quarterback of all time, and the numbers and the championships prove that. You know what I mean? And you can say what you want, but you know what I mean. You can't deny that as fact. So we're going to move on to the next topic. And I spoke about it on my last show and on my last show about my Las Vegas Raiders interviewing Josh McDaniels for the head coaching position. And I also noted that I read a report saying that he's not the favorite to land the job. And I also noted that sometimes, though, you cannot always believe these reports that come because that doesn't mean it's entirely true. Just because that report says, oh, he's not the coaching favorite, doesn't mean that is true. And obviously, we found out, you know, coaching favorite because now he has the job. So I also said when I talked about this before, about the whole interview, about how I felt about Josh McDaniels becoming a Raiders coach. And I told you guys I was 50-50, more leaning 60-40. I didn't really like the move. I didn't want my team being like these other teams that look at the Patriots culture and look at these coordinators, these GMs, and it's like, oh, well, look at these guys. They're always winning, you know what I mean? So let's go grab somebody from that winning culture because as history shows, Patriots coordinators and GMs don't do particularly well outside of that environment. And I've said it before, and I said it again because they're not Bill Belichick. But be that as it may, my Raiders pulled that trigger, and we went down this road, and now there's no looking back. And I listened to the press conference. I'm going to start off with Ziegler before I get to McDaniels. I will say this one thing: I actually believe Ziegler when he says about changing the culture, because let's say it's not really like, well, obviously with this new culture, like basically changing it into a more consistent winning culture is because, and you could tell he was so humble for the job and really was at a loss for words because every other word he was kind of like stumbling over it and getting the words mixed up a little bit. You know what I mean? So that was cool to see. He's excited for the job, and that's what I want. I want a guy who's excited to get this team on a consistent winning basis. I want that. You know what I mean? So that was nice to see from Ziegler. Like I said, I didn't have much information on this guy leading into this other than the fact that apparently he is a lot of responsible for the Patriots' quick resurgence. Like, I guess a lot of personnel moves, a lot of, signings, I guess ideas he had a lot to do with. So, I mean, I liked it. I hope that he all I can hope for Dave Ziegler is that he takes his job serious and that he is aggressive. I want him to be aggressive. I want him to be aggressive GM, but smart. I don't want him to be scared to make a move, but I don't want him to I don't want him to make moves that are obviously stupid. You know what I mean? But I also don't want him to be scared to make moves. I want him to be aggressive. So that's all I can hope for. And hopefully, if he is aggressive and, we can go out and get some good players, hopefully it works out. Now, and as well as draft. That's going to be very, very crucial, as we all know. Drafting is going to be very crucial. Free agent signing and drafting is going to be key for success if Ziegler wants to be a successful general manager for us and just in this league in general. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Josh. And said all the right things. Sounded good. I mean, and I'm not saying that sarcastically, like it did sound good. And one thing I really that caught my attention, and I'm sure caught a lot of Raiders fans' attention who watched the press conference. If you caught the underlining message, Josh McDaniels said, I think the thing about me is that he said, I'm not going to just do the same thing to win. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to find different ways to win in so many ways. And that was a shot at Gruden because as Raider fans, when he was our coach, we always said this. He always tries to win the exact same way. There's no new ways to win. He tries to win the exact same way. We always did say that. Even whether you loved him or you didn't like Gruden as a coach. He always tried to win the same way. And what I mean by that is like you don't know what you're going to get. Are we going to get a run-heavy attack? Or are we going to get a pass-heavy attack and then switch back to a run-heavy attack? Like, he would mix shit up so much. It's just like, but not in a positive way. Like he would always use the same philosophy to try to win the game instead of using a different philosophy to try to win the game, especially if we were down or if we were in a close matchup. So, that was definitely a shot at Gruden, especially if you caught all the reporters and everybody laughing in the room. But listen, I said it in my pros and cons. The pros is they are coming from a winning culture. Josh, the thing about Josh compared to other coordinators from New England is Josh has had over a decade. All these other coordinators usually only spend 3 to 5 years there, and then they get, all these other teams get happy feet and start hiring them from New England, and it never pans out. Josh has been in that system for over a decade, and especially with the way this day and age is in the NFL, where offense is obviously so crucial because, it's not saying defense don't still win championships, but there's a lot of points being scored more. So McDaniels, and he's always been a good offensive mind. His offenses have always been top-notch. And people can say, oh, well, he had Tom Brady. Well, look, he didn't have Tom Brady this year, and he had a top 10 offense. Look up the numbers. He did. He had a top 10 offense. So, and that was with a rookie quarterback and a bunch of built-in pieces at wide receiver and a really good running game. So imagine what he can do with a veteran quarterback like Derek Carr. If we can go out and get, I really feel like we're going to make a push for Devontae Adams. If we can make it that caliber of a move or get Devontae himself with the pieces we already have with Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, I really would like to keep him around because I think he's developed really nicely with us. If we can revamp that offensive line, we easily have better pieces on our offense than what he had in New England last year, and he had New England at a top 10 offense. So I was fit. I said I was 60-40, not really liking the move. They butter me up a little bit. I'm going to tilt it to still 50-50. They got to show me something. I'll put it this way. They got to show me what they can do in the draft process. And they got to show me what they can do in the draft process and in free agency. That's what will really catch my eye. Like, what type of moves are you guys going to make, and who are you going to fire? Like, that's the most pivotal thing for Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, but more or less Dave Ziegler. Because another thing I'm going to take a note of, Josh McDaniels said is, I'm not here to play GM. Excuse me. I'm here to be coach. And I think that's very, very important. Got a case of the hiccups. Oh, no. But anyway, he said, I'm not playing GM. I'm going to be the coach. Dave is going to do his job, and I'm going to do my job. And I think that's important because I think what a lot of these coordinators who come from New England make the mistake of doing is trying to copy Bill Belichick too much and play coach and GM. And there's only a few coaches that have that talent. Bill Parcells had it. Jimmy Johnson had it. Like, there's only a few. Bill Belichick has it that can play coach and GM at the same time. But a lot of these coordinators that come from New England, Bill O'Brien, he tried to sit there and play the same old card like Belichick. He wanted to be in control of player personnel and everything. He wanted his hands in everything. And you've seen how that worked out for them in the end. Didn't work out well. So I really liked the fact that Josh said, I'm not trying to be the GM. That's what we hired. That's what Mark hired Dave for. I'm here to be the head football coach of the Las Vegas Raiders and to get this team back to consistent winning tradition. Simple. And I think it's worth to note because, listen, Josh McDaniels, it's just like Mike Shanahan. I see, and there's a lot of Raider fans saying this, and a lot of my Raider fans make sense. Mike Shanahan, when he became our coach in his first head coaching gig, wasn't that great. Just like Josh McDaniels in Denver, and his first head coaching gig wasn't that great. What did Mike Shanahan do his second head coaching stint when he went to Denver? Won 2 championships. Josh has matured. He was offense coordinator for New England, went to Denver, got that head coaching experience, went back. I think he went to another team. I think he was with the Rams. He was with the Rams and then went back to New England. And then a full decade plus later, decided to get back into coaching. So the first go around didn't work for him. He said, you know what? Let me go back, do some more coordinating, maybe sponge more experience off. And then when I feel the time is ready and the team I want to do it, and the opportunity and situation that I feel most comfortable with, that I feel like I can turn around, then I'm going to get back into that coaching. And that's exactly what he did. Because, I mean, he almost went to the Colts a couple years ago. I was honest. I even said that too. Like, hey, we want to hire a guy we don't even know if he at the last minute he's going to ditch us, because that's what he did to the Colts. You know what I mean? But fortunately, that wasn't the case. Josh really seems on board with trying to get the Raiders back to being a championship caliber team. I am hoping that this time around, excuse me, especially for him, I'm hoping that this time around will be more success than the first time around. Not just because it was my team, it's my team, but because I feel like with all that wealth of knowledge coming from that winning culture, there should be no reason why that hasn't rubbed off you, and you shouldn't have that type of knowledge of, okay, this is how we're going to run it, this is how we're going to get it back on track, and this is how we can win in today's NFL. Like, and he's still young enough. He's the perfect 40-plus-year-old coach to be in this day and age, because his offense has kind of always been up to date with the times. It's always been up to. He's always been good at adapting with the times of the NFL offense. So, I mean, like I said, he got me from 60-40 to 50-50. What they do in free agency and drafting, and maybe trading, obviously trading as well, make some solid moves, make some eye-catching moves. Davante Adams, please. Hell, Davante Adams and OBJ, because it's not for certain OBJ is going to stick around with the Rams. Could you imagine that? OBJ, Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow in the slot, Darren Waller tight end, Josh Jacobs is running back, Zay Jones is the fourth wide receiver. Because, like I said, I want to keep Zay around. That like that. If Josh McDaniels can make moves like that, I'm sold. That's all I got to say. But we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. But all in all, like I said, they got me from a 60-40 no to yes ratio to a 50-50. So I guess you could say it was my overall takeaway from the press conference was it was a positive one. I came away optimistic, more optimistic than I was initially. I think that they do it right. Like I said, it's all about trading, free agency, and drafting. What type of moves they make is going to determine whether I am officially on board with Josh McDaniels being my head coach. Because even though he was young, this is a guy who did push to draft Tim Tebow in the first round when Tim Tebow was clearly a third-round talent at the quarterback position, clearly. Hopefully he's matured from those type of decisions. We'll see. We shall see. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the last topic of the stream of this episode for today or tonight. So used to doing during the day. Did I say during today? But in this last bit of topic news for tonight in this stream, Keith Thurman is former WBC and WBA unified welterweight champion, is going up against former 140-pound junior welterweight champion Mario Barrios. At welterweight at 147, Barrios is coming up. This is a good fight. This is a really good fight. I'm definitely going to tune in and watch it. It's definitely an important fight, especially for Keith Thurman. And I'm going to tell you why, because obviously Keith Thurman has had a rough last couple of years. I mean, he lost to Manny Pacquiao back in 2019. And ever since then, he took a long layoff, then was injured, had an injury, and then he's only had, I want to believe, like 2 fights since, and against scrubs, like some tune-up fights, etc. So Barrios is the first live body that he's fighting since Manny Pacquiao, really, if you really think about it. And if Keith Thurman wants to stay even remotely relevant, he has to win this fight, no doubt about it. And I think he has to do it in impressive fashion. And I'm even going to go and say he has to win it by knockout. And the reason why is because, one, he's a true welterweight here. He's the bigger guy. I mean, Barrios is coming up to welterweight. Thurman's been there his whole career. He has he has the bigger fight experience. Barrios' biggest fight was against, obviously, Gervonta Tank Davis. Keith Thurman has fought the likes of Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Manny Pacquiao. So he has that elite level experience to where anything less of a knockout, I feel like, in this fight for him is disappointing. Because given his experience and given the weight advantage and the size advantage and just the experience of being in bigger fights, I feel like if he comes out and he lets Barrios come in and give him a good fight, I still think that's kind of concerning for Keith Thurman in terms of going forward trying to land a bigger fight. Now, he obviously still has the name says he still has that going for him. But I just feel like he has to win by knockout or at least in impressive, dominant enough fashion to where he just has to look really good to where maybe, while Terrence Crawford is waiting around, well, I think he'll want to still wait to see what's going to happen between Ugas and Spence anyway. You know what I mean? He probably won't want to still fight Thurman. But if Crawford says, you know what, I don't feel like waiting around for Spence, there's money on the table here with Thurman if Thurman wins this fight. Thurman has to look good doing so, I feel like, in order to get that type of fight. He just has to. He has to look like the destroyer he once did when he was coming up. He hasn't looked like that guy for a long time. Once he started fighting better competition, that knockout, that one-time power started, diminishing real quick. But it's going to be interesting to see what version we get of Keith Thurman in this fight. And he has to look impressive. He just does. Like I said, to me, anything short of a straight up beatdown or a knockout is just disappointing in my opinion. He has to bully this kid. He has to at least dominate the way Errol Spence dominated Mikey Garcia when Mikey came up. But I want to say Thurman even has to do it just a tiny bit better than what Spence did in that fight. That's my opinion on Thurman's side. Now for Barrios, obviously, this is now the biggest fight of his career. It is. Much like I said about Barrios, Keith Thurman is more seasoned than Gervonta Tank Davis as well. Keith Thurman has fought better fighters, has fought on a bigger stage. So, I mean, for Barrios, this is a big challenge. Obviously, it's the biggest challenge he's had to date. He's a very good, skilled fighter. I like the kid. He's got to use his youth to win this fight. And it's going to be interesting to see if he has any power carry up from 140. And that was the thing that kind of I seen him fighting Tank, especially from Tank coming up in weight from 130 or 135, wherever he was coming up from that at that point in time. Barrios didn't have a lot of power at 140. So it's going to be interesting to see if the weight gain will help him increase his power. I think he has the skill and the activity to give Thurman problems. Something like what Manny did. He definitely has value. I just don't know if Barrios has the power that obviously Manny, even though at an advanced age, still had to keep Thurman off of him. But if he can use his youth and be smart and not get caught by the big bomb like he did against Tank, he has a real shot. He's definitely no slouch. He is definitely no slouch. He is no slouch at all. I just don't know. This is a toss-up for me. Just because of the inactivity of Thurman and just because of the youth of Barrios and the value. Like I said, the last time Thurman fought somebody who was throwing a gazillion punches at him was Pacquiao. And you've seen how that turned out. He got broke up. So I just think I'm going with Thurman in this fight. I expect him to win by decision, but I think Thurman has to knock him out. This is a crossroads fight for Thurman. This is definitely a crossroads fight for Thurman. This fight, Nigel, this fight is this Saturday. The fight is this Saturday. But this is a crossroads fight for Thurman because if he loses, obviously, like, where does he go from here? His whole purpose of fighting Barrios is because Barrios is a big enough name to where if he wins, especially in an impressive fashion, that maybe he can start getting back in the conversation of fighting guys like Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, etc. But he has to do it in impressive fashion. I feel like if Thurman just goes out here, looks okay, you know, and it's a close fight, and Thurman still pulls out a close decision, I just feel like the appeal from the top guys is not going to be there. They're going to look at him like he's washed. So for Thurman, he has to either beat Barrios up really, really good, or he has to win by knockout. That in order to secure a bigger money or a bigger name opponent. That's just my opinion on that. And for Barrios, if he could pull out a victory, well, now he can start calling out the bigger names in the division as well. Now he puts himself in that position. Do I think he's going to do it? Like I said, if he uses his youth and his value to carry the fight, he has a chance. I just fear that he doesn't have that knockout or strong enough wear down power that will make Thurman want to back up. I don't know if he has that, because I felt like if he didn't have that at 140 pounds to keep a smaller Gervonta Tank Davis off of him, he's not going to have that power moving up to 147, especially given that Thurman has fought there his whole career, unless he maybe invests in what Juan Manuel Marquez did when he fought Manny Pacquiao a fourth time, and that's invest in some weightlifting. Maybe, lift some weights, increase his power. I just don't know if he has that power to keep Thurman off of him, though. It's going to be interesting to see. That for Barrios is the biggest thing. Will he carry some power up to 147 that he didn't have at 140? That's going to be the interesting thing to me for Barrios. But once again, I have Thurman winning this fight. I do think it's going to be a close fight. I do think Thurman's going to win the decision. I'm going to go with unanimous decision. Thurman 115 and 113. I'm going to give him 2 points. I think that he's going to do just enough to win. I don't think he's going to knock Barrios out. I don't think that he's going to look impressive enough to catch the Errol Spence's and the Terrence Crawford eyes of the world. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to look that impressive because of the inactivity. And like I said, he hasn't fought this caliber of a fighter or even remotely close since 2019 when he fought Pacquiao. So we just don't know what Keith Thurman we're going to get. And that's why I think this fight will be close. But I think given his experience on a bigger stage and against tougher opponents, I think that will carry the day for Thurman. And I think that he will win this fight by a unanimous decision. By scores of 115 and 113. It's going to be a close fight, and it's going to be a good fight. And the reason why it's going to be a good fight is because Barrios' youth and the fact that he throws value. He doesn't just throw one punch at a time. He throws in combination. So this is going to be an interesting fight. And it's going to be interesting to see how Thurman combats that value. Because like I said, and I said it when he fought Pacquiao back then in 2019, even at 40 years old, the issue for Thurman with Pacquiao is that Pacquiao's going to throw in value. Thurman, at that point, we never seen him fight somebody who really threw value at him in terms of pulling off consistent combinations. And then obviously when we did, you saw the result. Didn't look that pretty. So Barrios definitely does have a chance. It's definitely going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be a fun fight, I think. I definitely think Barrios is going to look good in moments, but I think Thurman's going to land just enough power shots to make it look good to squeak out a victory. He might even put Barrios on his ass at some point because that's what Gervonta did. And that's what I'm saying, guys. Like, if Gervonta can come up from 130, 135 pounds and knock out Barrios, why can't Keith Thurman do it if this kid is coming up to his weight class and he's obviously the smaller man? So that's what it boils down to me for Barrios on Barrios' end is the power game. Will he carry up enough power to welterweight to befuddle Thurman enough to keep him off of him? And will he be able to handle Keith Thurman's power? That's the biggest things for me for Mario Barrios is the power. Power is the name of the game in this fight for Barrios. Can he withstand Thurman's power, and can he have enough power of his own to make a dent and keep Thurman honest and keep him at bay to a degree? We remain to be seen, but that fight is on Saturday night. I believe the fight does start around 9 o'clock, the card. We also have Leo Santa Cruz on the undercard of that fight. That is the first fight of the card. I have no idea who Leo is fighting. I have no clue who this guy is. In my opinion, in my perspective, a no-name fighter, I'll have to, look him up and see what he's about, see what challenges he presents. But this is definitely the fight I'll be looking forward to on Saturday night. I expect it to be a good fight. Hopefully, instead of a good fight, we get a great fight. So. But, all right, guys, that's a wrap for tonight. Once again, this is 717 Sports Chat Live. I'm your host, Marcus James Witherspoon. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on the YouTube channel, as well as hit that notification icon so you get all the latest content updates from the channel and from when I'm going live, as well as follow me on IG, follow me on Twitter. Twitter, and Marcus Withers 2 is the handle. You can also look up 717 Sports Chat Live on Twitter. You should find it on there as well as on IG. Show your support. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Like I said, hit that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. But once again, this is 717 Sports Chat Live. This was episode 35. I'm your host, Marcus James Witherspoon. I'm out of here for the night, guys. Be safe out there, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.